Greetings and welcome to another installment from the Patchwork Productionz Learn to Crochet for Beginners series. In this video, you will learn how to work the double crochet in the row. For those of you who are new to my channel, my name is Stitch, and Patchwork Productionz is all about learning and doing crochet. So make sure you subscribe so you never miss another installment. Without further ado, let's get started. For this tutorial, I'll be using some medium worsted weight or weight 4 yarn, and I'll be using a US 10 or a J10 size 5.75 millimeter hook. And if you haven't seen the other videos in this tutorial series, I encourage you to check that out. I'll put a link down in the description box. But let's get started here. Today we'll be learning how to make the double crochet. The double crochet is the next size up from the half double crochet that we saw in the previous tutorial video. So let's begin making our foundation chain. Start with a slip knot. So we're going to make our loop where the working end is over the tail end, and then we're going to draw the working end through the loop and pull, and there we have our slip knot. And so let's begin making a foundation chain, and we're going to make a foundation chain of 18 stitches. And just like with the single crochet and with the half double crochet, we're going to have extra stitches in our foundation chain that work as our turning chain to begin our first row. And so for this, for the double crochet, we will have 3 extra chains from what we're going to use in our, from what the stitches we're going to work into. So we're going to only work into 15 of the chains of our foundation chain, but we're going to have 3 extra. So let's count how many we have so far. I wonder if I have too many. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Yep, did 2 extra. So here we have our 18 chains for our foundation chain. And now we can begin our first row of double crochets. Now in this video, double crochet is the US terminology. In British terminology, this would be the triple or treble crochet. But for the remainder of this video, I'll be using the US terminology. So this is double crochet. And so, to begin double crochet, we need our turning chain of 3 chains. And so if we count the chains from the hook, not including the loop on the hook, so we have 1, 2, 3, we're going to work into the 4th chain. So let's move this close so you can see. This is the first chain from the hook. It's the second chain from the hook. This is the 3rd chain from the hook. And so now we're going to work into the 4th chain from the hook. And we're going to work from the bottom. So we're going to work into the bump that's at the bottom of the 4th chain from the hook. And just like the half double crochet, we begin a double crochet with a yarn over. And we keep this yarn over on our hook. And so we're going to insert a hook into the bump of the 4th chain from the hook. So now we have the bump that we just put our hook through, the yarn over that we made, and the loop that was on the hook. We're going to yarn over and draw through that bump, draw through the loop, but we're going to keep the other 2 on here, so we have 3 loops on the hook. Now this is for the double crochet. We're going to yarn over and draw through only 2 of the loops, the first loop and the second loop. So we went through the 2 loops, but we kept that last loop on our hook. So now we have 2 loops on the hook. And now we're going to yarn over and draw through both loops. This is our first double crochet that we've made. I'll do it again slowly and up close so you can see. So to make our next one, we're going to go into the next bump, which is here, and we're going to yarn over. We're going to keep that yarn over on our hook. We're going to insert our hook into the bump. So now we have the loop that was on the hook, the yarn over that we made, and the bump that we inserted our hook into. We're going to yarn over and draw through the bump, but keep the other 2 loops on the hook. So now we have 3 loops on the hook. We're then going to yarn over and draw through both loops at the front, but keep the loop on the back. So now we have 2 loops on the hook. Then we're going to yarn over and we're going to draw through both loops. And so that's our second double crochet. Let's do this again. We're going to yarn over. We're going to keep the yarn over on our hook. We're going to insert it into the next stitch. In this case of our foundation chain, it's our bump. So we have 3 loops on the hook, the bump we inserted into, the yarn over that we made, and the loop that was on the hook. We're going to yarn over and draw through the bump and leave the other 2 loops on the hook. So now we have 3 loops on the hook. We're going to yarn over again and only draw through the front 2 loops. We're going to leave that last loop on the hook. So now we have 2 loops on the hook. Then we're going to yarn over and draw through the last 2 loops. And so this is how we make our double crochet. And just like with the single crochet and with the half double crochet, tension again is important to ensure that your stitches are the right size. As you're making the double crochet, you'll notice that many of the loops can be adjusted in size as you're going through the process. And if you make these loops too big or too small, it will affect the size of your project. You want to keep your stitches, this stitch should be even. So whatever size this loop is when you go to make your double crochet, that's the size it will be when it's done. So if you make this too big, it will warp your project, and if you make it too tight and too small, it will also shrink your project. So be mindful with how your tension is as you're making your double crochets so that you keep a uniform shape for your stitches. Now I'll finish this row here and we'll see how to move on to row 2. Okay, so now we're at the last 2 stitches from our foundation chain, so we're going to work the last 2 double crochets. Going to yarn over, insert our hook into that bump. Going to yarn over again, draw a loop through the bump. Yarn over, draw through the first 2 loops only, and then yarn over and draw through the last 2 loops. I'm going to make the last one. Maybe a little tricky. We can just work it. And there. So now we have finished this first row. Now we're going to move on to row 2. If you need to pause this video or go back to a later part, that's would be helpful to help you to get the hang of the double crochet, and especially this part as we move on to row 2. There are a few things you want to make sure that you keep in mind and remember. Firstly, let's count our row here and see how many stitches we have. Remember that our foundation chain was 18 stitches, And so we should have only worked double crochets into 15 of those stitches because 3 of them were our turning chain. And so let's count this to see if this is the case. You look at the top, these V's help us to remember that this is a finished stitch and the loop is not counted as a stitch. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and then our turning chain. So just as we thought, we have 15 double crochets. Now, as we get larger with our stitches, if we're doing double crochet, if we're doing the US triple crochet, as the stitches get taller, we can actually count these another way because we can see them better. This is what's called a post. So this double crochet that we see here is also known as a post. And so we can actually count the posts to be able to know how many stitches we have as well. So again, if we count it, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So we can count the posts because they're easier to see, unlike, a single crochet or something. And we can also know how many stitches we have by that. So now that we know we have 15 double crochets, we're going to move on to row 2 and keep this number 15 in mind. To move on to row 2, we need a turning chain of 3 chains. And so we're going to chain 1, chain 2, chain 3, and we're going to turn our work. And now we're going to work into the second double crochet. So if you look down your chain, you have 1, 2, 3. This is the first double crochet. We're not going to work into this one. We're going to work into the second double crochet. And we're going to go under the 2 V's. Now if you look, you can see there's the hole between the posts. There's this kind of strand of yarn. And then there's this second hole. And then there's the space. So we're going to go into the second hole. We're not going to go under here. We're not going to go through the posts. But we're going to go into this hole that's under the 2 V's. And that's where we're going to work our stitch. Now, if you saw the previous tutorial video on the half double crochet, you'll recognize that what we're doing here is we're skipping this first stitch because this turning chain that we've made counts as a double crochet. And so instead of going into the first stitch where our first double crochet would be, we go into the second one to make our second double crochet for this row because our turning chain counts as one. So let's make our first double crochet for row 2. It's the one that we're going to make. And we're going to work it into the second chain, the second stitch, from the hook. And so we're going to go underneath those 2 V's and we're going to work our double crochet, yarn over and drawing that loop. We leave the other 2 loops on the hook and then we yarn over and draw through the first 2 only. Then we yarn over again and draw through both loops. And so now we have made our first double crochet. But in terms of counting, we actually do count this turning chain as a double crochet. So let's work the double crochet again. Gonna yarn over, leave the yarn over on the hook, insert our hook under the 2 V's, not in between the posts, but underneath the 2 V's. We're gonna yarn over and draw a loop. We're gonna leave the other 2 loops on the hook, so we have 3 loops on the hook. Gonna yarn over, draw through the first 2, and then we're gonna yarn over and draw through the last 2. So that is our double crochet. And so as we work the double crochet, just like with any project that's worked in the row, the double crochet can be made in as many rows as you would like, if you're making your own project or as whatever project you're working with instructs. And you just have to add your turning chain of 3 chains for the double crochet. Now, when we get to moving on to row 3, just like with the half double crochet, our last stitch is going to be worked into the turning chain. So we're going to move on to working into the 3rd row. So we have one more double crochet to work into. So we're going to work into this, make our double crochet, and now we're going to count our stitches again. And this time we're going to count the turning chain as one of the stitches. So let's count the V's. Remember, this loop does not count as a stitch. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Now, that's just what we had on the bottom row, except on the bottom row, we didn't count the turning chain as one of the stitches. And so if we go back to row 1 and count the posts, we can then see that if we include the turning chain, we're going to have 16 stitches. So we have, counting the posts on the row 1, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. And so we're supposed to actually have 16 stitches in a row if we include the turning chain. This was the same as when we did the half double crochet, and the reason is because we counted that turning chain as a stitch, and then we skipped that first double crochet in each row that we're going to make, because this turning chain counts as one. And so for the last stitch in row 2, because counting our turning chain in row 2, we only have 15, we need to work into the turning chain. So we're going to find the last chain, or the top of the turning chain, which is right here. You can see the little V that indicates it. And we're actually going to work our final double crochet for this row into that. And it may be a little tricky to get under both of those loops, but you kind of have to sometimes fight with it. But it also helps if when you chain, this is why it's important to chain loosely, because if you ever have to work into your chain, it will be difficult to do so. So let's work this double crochet. Oops. And there. So now if we count this, we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16, including our turning chain. And so this is working the double crochet in the row. We have to remember that for this, the turning chain counts as a double crochet. And so when we finish each row, we have to work our final double crochet into the top of the chain. Now, as I've mentioned before, there are many different techniques in crochet. And so this is just one of the ways to move from row to row for the double crochet. There are a few others which I may cover in a later video, but this is just one of the basic ways. There's also different ways that you can work into that chain. You don't have to try to get under both bumps. You could just go straight under the chain itself and just work straight through that chain loop and do it like that. Or you could work into the actual stitch like I did the first time. It pretty much just depends on your preference, or maybe if the project directs you to do something, but this is basically just how you do it. And double crochet is actually, for me, relatively easy to make, which is pretty nice, and it's a very versatile stitch. And we can see how to use these stitches later, but for now let's just fasten off. Just cut our yarn, and then we're gonna draw it through that last loop and make a knot. And so there, this is fastened off, and this is the end of this tutorial for today. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed this tutorial and want to learn more about crochet, be sure to hit the subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss another video. Don't forget to give this video a big thumbs up, and also share this video with your friends and family or on social media. And feel free to leave a comment down below. If you have any questions or suggestions or any feedback, I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, catch you later.